My husband appointed the bodyguard as chairman and ordered him to slap me 30 times, just so the mistress could watch the drama. 30 minutes later, he desperately begged me when he saw his entire career and fortune crumble before his eyes. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M4 morning, A4 afternoon, or E4 evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The crystal chandeliers of the Ritz-Carlton Chicago were blinding tonight, but not nearly as blinding as the sheer audacity of the man standing on the stage. My husband, Russell. The newly appointed CEO of Miller Construction Group. He looked like a king in his bespoke tuxedo, the very image of success and power. And clinging to his arm, wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, was Tiffany. She was 24, glowing with youth and the arrogance of a woman who believes she has won the ultimate prize. I stood near the back of the ballroom, wearing an emerald green gown that Russell had sneered at earlier in the car. He told me I looked like a desperate old woman trying to recapture her youth. But I didn't care about his insults anymore. I was just waiting. The air in the room was thick with expensive perfume and the murmur of Chicago's elite, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Then, Russell took the microphone. His voice boomed through the speakers, dripping with that charismatic charm that had fooled me for 12 years. He thanked the board, he thanked the investors, and then, he did the unthinkable. He gestured for his head of security, a massive man named Brutus, to step forward. Russell smiled, a cruel, twisted smile that didn't reach his eyes. He announced to the room that tonight was a night of bold decisions. He said he wanted to prove that power was about action, not just titles. He appointed Brutus as the honorary chairman for the next 5 minutes. The crowd laughed, thinking it was a joke, a bit of corporate theater. Tiffany giggled, whispering something in Russell's ear. Then Russell pointed at me. The spotlight swung around, blinding me. He said, as the first act of our new chairman, I want to teach my wife a lesson in respect. She seems to have forgotten her place lately. Brutus, give her 30 slaps. Make sure she wakes up. The room went deathly silent. The laughter died in everyone's throats. You could hear a pin drop on the marble floor. I saw the shock on the faces of the investors, the horror in the eyes of the wives. But nobody moved. They were all too afraid of Russell's power, or perhaps they were just too morbidly fascinated by the spectacle. Brutus hesitated for a second, looking from me to Russell. But Russell's face was hard as stone. He nodded. Brutus stepped toward me. He was huge, his hand like a slab of meat. I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. As Brutus raised his hand, I locked eyes with Russell. I didn't look at the mistress. She didn't matter. She was just a prop in his ego trip. I looked at the man I had sacrificed everything for. The man I had built from nothing. Russell, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in that silent room, it carried like a gunshot. You touch me, and I guarantee that by tomorrow, your entire family will have no place to hide in the city. Brutus froze. His hand hovered in the air. He looked back at Russell, confused by the absolute authority in my voice. I wasn't the cowering housewife they expected. I was a statue of ice. Russell's face turned purple. He roared into the microphone, "Do it. I'll take responsibility. Teach her a lesson." But I didn't give Brutus the chance. I turned my back on them. I turned my back on the stage, on the humiliation, on the 12 years of lies. I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. Every eye followed me. They probably thought I was running away in shame. They thought I was fleeing to cry in the bathroom. I pushed open the heavy double doors and stepped out into the cool night air of the hotel lobby. I pulled my phone from my clutch. My hand was perfectly steady. I dialed a number I had saved under the architect. Walter picked up on the first ring. "Meredith?" his deep voice asked. "Walter," I said, staring at my reflection in the glass doors. "It's time. Pull the trigger." "Understood," he replied. I hung up. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold air. Inside that ballroom, Russell was probably laughing, thinking he had won, thinking he had finally crushed me. He had no idea that the countdown had already started. In exactly 30 minutes, his world was going to end. Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'm Meredith, and what you just heard was the moment my life split into two. The moment I stopped being a victim and started being the storm. Before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, you are going to want to hear how Russell begged, I need to take you back. I need you to understand how a brilliant finance graduate ended up almost being slapped by a bodyguard in front of her husband's mistress. Please comment below where you are watching from. I love seeing how far my story travels. Now, let me tell you about the stolen dreams that led us here. To understand the monster Russell became, you have to understand the man he was when I met him. And you have to understand the woman I used to be. 12 years ago, I wasn't a silent housewife standing in the back of a ballroom. I was Meredith, a top-tier finance graduate working on Wall Street. I had recruiters calling me every week. I had a scholarship offer for a PhD program. I had a future that was bright, independent, and entirely my own. My father was a humble accountant. He spent his life counting other people's money, ensuring every penny was accounted for. He taught me that integrity was the only currency that mattered. When he passed away, he left me a modest inheritance, but more importantly, he left me his work ethic and his sharp mind for numbers. Then I met Russell. Back then, he was just a guy from a small town with empty pockets and a head full of dreams. He was charming, yes. He had this intensity that drew you in. He talked about building skyscrapers, about changing the skyline of Chicago. But he had a chip on his shoulder the size of a boulder. He was terrified of being poor. He was terrified of being invisible. I fell in love with his ambition. I thought we were partners. I saw a diamond in the rough, and I thought that with my polish, he could shine. I was so naive. When Russell started his construction company, he had no idea how to manage cash flow. He was brilliant at selling a vision, but terrible at the execution. Within 6 months, he was drowning. He couldn't pay his suppliers. His workers were walking off the job. He came to me one night, crying at my kitchen table, saying he was going to lose everything. He said he was a failure. That was the moment I made the biggest mistake of my life. I looked at him, broken and desperate, and my heart melted. I decided to save him. I declined the PhD offer. I quit my high-paying job on Wall Street to work for him, unpaid, as his CFO, his strategist, and his emotional support system. But that wasn't enough. The company needed capital. The banks wouldn't touch him. So, I did something I promised my father I would never do. I liquidated my inheritance. The stocks my grandmother had left me, the savings my parents had scraped together for decades, I sold it all. Every cent. I remember handing him the check. It was for $200,000. It was everything I had in the world. Russell, I told him, this is our future. Please, be careful with it. He grabbed my hands, tears streaming down his face. Meredith, I swear to you, I will build the world at your feet. You will never regret this. We are a team. Forever. And for a while, I believed him. We worked 18-hour days. I managed every dollar, negotiated every contract, and smoothed over every relationship he damaged with his temper. When he couldn't pay payroll in the second year, I sold my mother's vintage jewelry collection, the only thing I had left of her, to make sure his workers could feed their families. I never told him about the jewelry. I didn't want to wound his fragile pride. Slowly, the company started to grow. My financial strategies worked. We started winning bigger bids. Russell became the face of the company, the charismatic leader who shook hands and cut ribbons. I stayed in the shadows, balancing the books, ensuring compliance, and fixing his mistakes. I was happy to be the wind beneath his wings. I didn't need the glory. I just wanted us to succeed. But as the zeros in our bank account grew, something in Russell changed. He started to believe his own hype. He started to rewrite history. In interviews, he would say, "I built this from nothing with my own two hands." He never mentioned the wife who gave up her career. He never mentioned the inheritance that saved him from bankruptcy. He never mentioned the jewelry. At dinner parties, he would interrupt me when I talked about business. "Oh, Meredith worries too much about the pennies," he would laugh, patting my hand condescendingly. "She's risk-averse. That's why I'm the CEO and she handles the household details." I felt a sting every time, but I pushed it down. I told myself it was just his way of coping with stress. I told myself that marriage was about compromise. I told myself that as long as we were building a life together, it didn't matter who got the credit. But I was wrong. It mattered. By erasing my contribution, he was erasing me. He was turning me from a partner into a dependent. And once he convinced himself that he did it all alone, it was a short step to convincing himself that he didn't need me at all. I had given him my dreams, my money, and my youth. And in return, he was preparing to treat me like an obsolete piece of furniture. Our life had become a glossy magazine cover. We moved into a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. It was a palace of glass and steel, filled with designer furniture that looked beautiful but was uncomfortable to sit on. It was a house, but it never felt like a home. It felt like a stage set for Russell's ego. I had officially stepped back from the company when our son, Toby, was born. Russell insisted on it. "You've worked hard enough," he said. "Raising the heir to the Miller empire is the most important job now." It sounded romantic at the time. But looking back, I see it was a demotion. It was his way of removing the only person who knew the truth about his finances from the boardroom. Then came Beverly. My mother-in-law. Beverly was a woman made of hairspray and malice. She had never liked me. To her, I was too educated, too opinionated, and not nearly submissive enough for her golden boy. When we moved into the penthouse, she sold her house and bought a condo 3 blocks away. She was at our place every single day. She walked through my home like she owned it. She critiqued my flower arrangements, my choice of curtains, and even the way I folded the towels. But her favorite pastime was undermining me in front of Russell and Toby. One evening, about 6 months before the gala, we were having dinner. I had spent all afternoon cooking Russell's favorite roast beef. I was trying, God knows I was trying, to reconnect with him. Russell was on his phone, as always, texting and smiling at the screen. "Russell," I said gently. "Could we have a no-phone rule at the table? Just for 30 minutes? I want us to hear about Toby's day." Russell didn't even look up. He just waved a hand dismissively. "I'm working, Meredith. Some of us have to earn the money to pay for this steak." Beverly, sitting across from him, chimed in immediately. Her voice was like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, leave him alone, Meredith. You have no idea the pressure he's under. A man of his stature carries the weight of the world. The least you can do is let him have some peace in his own home." "I just want him to talk to his son," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Beverly scoffed. "If you had raised Toby better, maybe he wouldn't be so needy. You coddle him too much. Russell needs a strong son, not a mama's boy." I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. "I am raising a kind son, Beverly. Unlike some men." Russell finally looked up, his eyes cold. Don't speak to my mother like that. She's right. You're nagging me the moment I walk in the door. It's suffocating. Suffocating? I laughed, a bitter, dry sound. I haven't had a real conversation with you in weeks, Russell. I'm lonely. I'm invisible in this house. Beverly took a sip of her wine and delivered the line that still haunts me. You should be grateful, Meredith. Most women your age would kill to be invisible in a penthouse like this. You have a driver, a cook, unlimited credit cards. What more do you want? Russell is a powerful man. Men like him, they have appetites. They have needs. You should be thankful he still comes home to eat your cooking at all. He has the right to have more than one woman, really. It's nature. I stared at her. She was practically condoning adultery right at the dinner table. I looked at Russell, waiting for him to defend me. Waiting for him to tell his mother that she was crossing a line. But Russell just smirked. He looked at me with a mix of pity and contempt. Mom's old school, Meredith. But she has a point. You've become boring. You used to be sharp. Now you just talk about school runs and grocery bills. It's tedious. He stood up, throwing his napkin on the table. I'm going out. I have a meeting. A meeting at 9 p.m.? I asked. Don't wait up, he said. He kissed his mother on the cheek, ignored Toby, and walked out the door. I sat there, frozen. Beverly smiled at me, a triumphant, venomous smile. See, she whispered. You're driving him away. And when he leaves you, Meredith, you'll have nothing. No money, no home, no status. You are nothing without him. That night, I realized I was living in a gilded cage. I was the housekeeper, the nanny, and the punching bag. But I wasn't a wife. And I certainly wasn't a partner anymore. I was an accessory that had gone out of style. A woman's intuition is a terrifying thing. It starts as a whisper, a nagging feeling in the pit of your stomach that something isn't right. For me, the whispers turned into screams over small, insignificant details. It started with the scent. Russell had always worn a specific cologne, a heavy musk that I had bought him years ago. But lately, when he came home, if he came home, he smelled different. It was subtle. A hint of vanilla and jasmine clinging to his suit jackets. It was the kind of sweet, cloying perfume that young women wear. Then there were the expenses. As the former CFO, old habits die hard. I still glanced at the household accounts, even though Russell had moved the main business accounts to a new firm, claiming he wanted to lighten my load. One Tuesday morning, I was sorting through the mail and found a credit card statement he must have forgotten to hide. My eyes scanned the list. Expensive dinners at restaurants I knew he hadn't taken me to. A weekend stay at a boutique hotel in the Hamptons when he claimed he was at a conference in Detroit. And then I saw it. A charge for $50,000 at Hermes. My heart skipped a beat. $50,000. Our anniversary was coming up next week. A wave of foolish, desperate hope washed over me. Maybe he was planning a surprise? Maybe he was trying to fix things? Maybe the distance, the coldness, was just stress, and he was finally making a grand gesture to apologize? I spent the next few days in a state of anxious anticipation. I started dressing up more. I cooked his favorite meals. I even tried to be nicer to Beverly, swallowing her insults with a smile. On the night of our anniversary, Russell came home early. He held a small gift bag. My heart soared. I thought, this is it. This is the turning point. He handed me the bag with a lazy smile. Happy anniversary, babe. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a silk scarf. It was pretty, yes. but I knew the brand. It cost maybe $400. I looked at the scarf, then at him. Thank you, Russell. It's beautiful. I know, he said, pouring himself a drink. I have great taste. I waited. I waited for the real gift. The $50,000 bag. But he just sat on the sofa and turned on the TV. Is there anything else? I asked, hating how pathetic I sounded. He frowned. What? Isn't that enough? You're so materialistic, Meredith. It's the thought that counts. I felt the blood drain from my face. The scarf wasn't the gift. The scarf was the free gift with purchase you get when you spend a fortune at the boutique. He had bought the bag for someone else. And he had given me the freebie. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the tub, clutching the silk scarf, feeling like I was going to throw up. He had a mistress. He was spending our money I had helped him earn, on another woman, while tossing me the scraps. I wanted to storm out there. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call a lawyer right then and there. But then, I heard a small knock on the bathroom door. Mom? It was Toby. Are you okay? Grandma said you're being dramatic again. I opened the door and saw my 8-year-old son looking at me with big, worried eyes. He was holding his baseball glove. Dad said he might play catch with me if he's not too tired. Do you think he will? I looked at Toby's hopeful face. He worshipped his father. Russell was his hero. If I blew up the marriage now, if I exposed the affair, I would be the one destroying Toby's world. Russell would spin it. Beverly would poison Toby against me. They would say I was crazy, jealous, vindictive. I looked at the scarf in my hand. It felt like a noose. Yes, honey, I lied, forcing a smile that felt like cracking glass. Daddy loves you. Go ask him. I watched Toby run to the living room. I saw Russell sigh, annoyed, but tossed the ball back a few times before returning to his phone. I couldn't leave yet. I wasn't ready. I didn't have a plan. And I was terrified that if I fought him now, with his power and money, I would lose custody of my son. So, I swallowed the bile in my throat. I tied the scarf around my neck, hiding the pulse jumping in my throat. I decided to wait. I decided to endure. But I didn't know that my endurance had a limit. And that limit was approaching fast. The breaking point didn't come with a shout. It came with a whisper of a dying candle. It was 6 months ago. Toby's 8th birthday. For a child, turning 8 is a monumental event. Toby had been talking about it for weeks. All he wanted was a simple family dinner. He wanted his dad to be there to blow out the candles on his superhero cake. I had called Russell that morning. I begged him. Russell, please. I don't care about the other nights. Just be home by 6 p.m. tonight. It's Toby's birthday. Promise me. Relax, Meredith, he had snapped. I'm the CEO, not a clock puncher. But yes, I'll be there. I'll be there for my boy even if the world ends. I believed him. Foolishly, desperately, I believed him. I decorated the dining room. I baked the cake from scratch. Toby put on his favorite shirt. We sat at the table at 5:50 p.m., waiting. 6 o'clock came and went. 6:30. 7. The roast chicken grew cold. The gravy formed a skin on top. Toby sat swinging his legs, staring at the door. He's probably just in traffic, right, Mom? Toby asked, his voice wavering. Yes, sweetie. Just traffic, I said, texting Russell for the 10th time. No answer. Straight to voicemail. At 8 o'clock, Toby stopped asking. He just slumped in his chair, picking at the icing on his slice of cake. The candles had long since melted into puddles of wax, ruining the superhero design. "Can we eat, Mom?" "I'm hungry," he whispered. "Sure, baby." We ate in silence. The sound of forks scraping against china felt deafening. At 9 o'clock, I put Toby to bed. He didn't cry. That was the worst part. He just looked defeated. He looked like he was getting used to the disappointment. "Mom," he asked as I tucked him in. "Does Daddy not love me anymore? Is it because I'm not good at baseball?" My heart shattered into a million pieces. It felt like a physical blow. I hugged him tight, trying to absorb his pain into my own body. "No, baby. Daddy loves you. Daddy is lost right now. It has nothing to do with you. You are perfect." I stayed with him until he fell asleep. Then I went downstairs to wait. I didn't clean up the table. I left the cold food, the melted candles, the empty chair. I wanted Russell to see it. He stumbled through the door at 2 a.m. The smell hit me first. Stale bourbon and that sickly sweet perfume, vanilla and jasmine. He was laughing to himself, stumbling over the rug. His tie was loose, and his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. And there, plain as day, on the collar of his shirt, was a smear of bright red lipstick. It wasn't mine. I never wore red. He looked at me sitting in the dark living room and frowned. "Why are you up? You look like a ghost." "It was Toby's birthday, Russell," I said, my voice dead calm. "You promised." He waved a hand, nearly losing his balance. "Oh, stop it. I bought him an iPad. He'll be fine. Kids don't care about dinners. They care about stuff. He waited for you for 4 hours. He thinks you don't love him." Russell's face darkened. He walked over to me, looming over the chair. The smell of the other woman was suffocating. "Don't you dare turn my son against me. I was working. I was networking. I was securing his future inheritance." "You have lipstick on your collar, Russell," I pointed out. "Is that what you call networking?" He touched his collar, then looked at me with a sneer. He didn't even try to deny it. "You know what, Meredith? You're exhausting. You're always whining, always complaining. Maybe if you were more fun, I'd want to come home. Maybe if you didn't look so miserable all the time, I wouldn't need to find comfort elsewhere." He leaned in close, his breath reeking of alcohol. "I pay for this house. I pay for the food. I pay for your clothes. So shut up and let me sleep." He stumbled past me and went upstairs to the guest room, slamming the door. I sat there in the silence. I didn't cry. The tears had dried up hours ago. Inside me, something fundamentally shifted. The love I had held onto, the hope, the fear of leaving, it all evaporated. In its place, a cold, hard resolve formed. It was sharp and heavy, like a weapon. He had broken his promise to his son. He had come home smelling of another woman and blamed me for it. He thought he owned me because he controlled the money. I looked at the lipstick stain in my mind's eye. I looked at the cold birthday cake. "Okay, Russell," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to play games? You want to talk about inheritance and money? Let's talk about money. Let's talk about who really built this empire." I stood up. I wasn't Meredith the victim anymore. I was Meredith the financial shark, and I smelled blood in the water. The next morning, Russell acted as if nothing had happened. He tossed the iPad onto the kitchen counter for Toby, gave a half-hearted apology about a crisis at the site, and left for work. He didn't notice that I wasn't making him coffee. He didn't notice that I wasn't looking at him with hurt eyes. I was looking at him like a butcher looks at a side of beef, assessing the weak points. As soon as he left, I went to my closet. I dug out a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was my father's old address book. It was worn leather, smelling of old paper and tobacco. I flipped through the pages until I found the name, Walter Vance. Walter was my father's best friend. He was a titan in the investment world, a man who moved markets with a whisper. He had always treated me like a daughter, but I had lost touch with him as I drowned in Russell's world. I dialed the number. Meredith? His voice was gravelly and warm. Is everything all right? I haven't heard from you since the wedding. No, Walter, I said. Everything is wrong. And I need your help. I need to go to war. We met at a diner far from the city center, a place where Russell's flashy associates would never be caught dead. I told Walter everything. The affair, the neglect, the verbal abuse, and my suspicion that Russell was hiding money. Walter listened, his face hardening like granite. When I finished, he didn't offer empty platitudes. He tapped the table with a thick finger. Your father warned me about him, Walter grumbled. He said that boy had too much hunger and not enough conscience. Meredith, if you want to take him down, you can't just divorce him. He'll hide the assets. He'll drag it out in court until you're bankrupt. You need to strike first, and you need to strike hard. I know, I said. But I don't have access to the real books anymore. He moved everything. Walter smiled, a dry, sharp expression. That's why I brought a friend. He gestured to the booth behind us. A man slid into the seat. He looked disheveled, nervous, wearing a frayed jacket. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. Meredith, meet Elias, Walter said. He was Miller Construction's junior accountant until last Tuesday. Elias looked at me, wringing his hands. Mrs. Miller. I'm sorry. He fired me because I asked questions. About the shell companies. My ears perked up. Shell companies? Yes, Elias whispered, looking around the diner as if he expected Russell to jump out from behind the counter. He's been moving money. Huge amounts. He set up vendors that don't exist. Titan Materials, Apex Consulting. They bill the company millions for supplies that are never delivered. He approves the invoices himself. Where is the money going? I asked. Crypto, Elias said. And offshore accounts. But mostly crypto. He thinks he's a genius investor. But the market crashed last month. He's bleeding cash, Mrs. Miller. He's desperate. Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, black USB drive. I managed to copy the raw data before security escorted me out, Elias said, his hand trembling as he pushed the drive toward me. It's a mess. It's unorganized. Thousands of transaction logs, encrypted files, random spreadsheets. I couldn't make sense of the full picture. It's just junk data to the untrained eye. I looked at the USB drive. To Elias, it was junk. To Russell, it was a buried secret. But to me? I was a Wharton graduate. I was the woman who had balanced books before Russell knew what a balance sheet was. I picked up the drive. It felt cold and heavy in my palm. It's not junk, Elias, I said, a fire igniting in my chest. It's a puzzle. And there is a pattern in every chaos. If there is a digital trail, I will find it. Walter nodded, satisfied. You have the blood of your father in you, Meredith. Go home. Decrypt it. Find the smoking gun. When you have the evidence, call me. I have the capital ready. We're going to buy his debt, buy his shares, and when he falls, we'll be the ones holding the net. I left the diner with the USB drive tucked into my bra, right next to my heart. I felt a surge of adrenaline I hadn't felt in a decade. I wasn't just a scorned wife anymore. I was an investigator. I was a hunter. And Russell Miller had no idea that the prey he had been tormenting was about to bite back. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the submissive, quiet wife. I nodded when Russell insulted me. I made sure his shirts were pressed. I played the part of the fading, boring woman he believed me to be. But by night, the moment Russell left for his meetings with Tiffany or passed out drunk, I went to work. I set up a command center in the guest bedroom closet, the one place Russell never looked. I used an air-gapped laptop Walter had provided. I plugged in Elias's USB drive and stared at the chaos of numbers. It was daunting. Thousands of lines of code, fragmented Excel sheets, banking routing numbers that led to the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. But as I stared at the screen, the old Meredith woke up. The Meredith who could spot a decimal point error from across the room. I started tracing the patterns. Russell wasn't just greedy, he was reckless. He had created a complex web of shell companies, yes, but he was lazy with the execution. He used the same registered agent for all of them. He used his own birthday as part of the routing passwords. I found the payments to Titan Materials. Millions of dollars for steel that was never purchased. Then I traced where that money went. It wasn't just buying handbags for Tiffany. It was worse. He was gambling it. He had poured nearly $10 million into high-risk cryptocurrency schemes, thinking he could double the company's value overnight. But the market had tanked. He had lost 40% of the company's operating capital. To cover the losses, he had done something unforgivable. I found a transfer log dated 3 months ago. A transfer of $5 million from the Employee Beneficiary Trust. I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand. He hadn't just stolen from the company profits. He had raided the employee pension fund. The retirement savings of the foremen, the crane operators, the administrative staff who had been with us since the beginning. People like old Mr. Henderson, who wanted to retire next year. Russell had stolen their future to pay for his mistress and his gambling addiction. Then I saw something else. A recurring withdrawal from Toby's college fund. My vision blurred with red rage. He had drained our son's future. The account I had started the day Toby was born, the money I had carefully invested for 8 years, it was empty. Gone. I sat back in the dark closet, the glow of the laptop illuminating my tears. This wasn't just a bad marriage. This was a crime scene. Russell wasn't just a cheater, he was a monster who would eat his own young to feed his ego. But I hit a wall. I could see the transfers, I could see the shell companies, but I couldn't access the final destination. The offshore account in Switzerland where he was hiding the remaining liquid cash, the getaway fund he was clearly building for himself and Tiffany. That account was locked behind a 2-factor authentication system. It required a physical digital key, a secure USB token that generated a rolling code. I knew exactly where that key was. Russell wore it on his keychain. He never let it out of his sight. He slept with his keys on the nightstand. He took them into the shower. He was paranoid. Without that key, I had evidence of fraud, but I couldn't seize the assets. I couldn't get the money back for the employees or for Toby. I needed him to plug that key into a device I controlled. How do you get a paranoid narcissist to hand over the keys to his kingdom? You don't ask him. You make him think it's his idea. You play into his arrogance. You play into his belief that you are a stupid, helpless trophy wife who needs him to fix everything. I closed the laptop. A plan began to form in my mind. It was risky. It required me to swallow my pride and act like the pathetic doormat he thought I was. It involved a handbag, a fake website, and a whole lot of acting. I wiped my tears. I wasn't sad anymore. I was dangerous. Enjoy your money while you can, Russell, I whispered. Because I'm coming for every single dime. The trap was set for a Friday evening. I knew Russell would be in a good mood because he was planning to fly Tiffany to Miami for the weekend, a trip he told me was an investor conference. I prepared a dinner of lobster and champagne. I dressed in a soft, modest dress, hair pulled back, the image of the obedient wife. When Russell came home, he was suspicious of the lobster, but the champagne relaxed him. "What's the occasion?" he asked, loosening his tie. "I just wanted to apologize," I said, looking down at my hands. "I've been nagging you lately. I know how hard you work. I know I'm not exciting anymore. I just want to support you." Russell puffed up like a peacock. This was the narrative he loved. "Well, I'm glad you finally realized that, Meredith. It's not easy being me." "I know," I said softly. "And I wanted to do something to show you I accept your lifestyle." "I know about her, Russell." He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "What?" "The girl." "Tiffany," I said, keeping my voice trembling but devoid of anger. "I know. And I accept it. If she makes you happy, and if you stay married to me, I can look the other way. In fact, I want to make peace." Russell looked at me as if I had grown two heads. Then, a slow, smug smile spread across his face. He thought he had broken me completely. He thought I was so desperate to keep the title of Mrs. Miller that I was condoning his affair. "You're growing up, Meredith," he chuckled. "That's very mature of you." "I saw a charge for Hermes a while ago," I lied effortlessly. "I know you wanted to buy her that limited edition Birkin bag. The Himalayan crocodile one? I heard she's been posting about it." "Yeah, well, it's sold out everywhere," Russell grumbled. "She's been nagging me about it for weeks." "That's the thing," I said, reaching for my iPad. "I found one. Through a private seller in Paris. I wanted to buy it for you, so you could give it to her. As a peace offering. To show I'm okay with my place." Russell's eyes widened. Greed and ego warred in his face. The idea of his wife buying a gift for his mistress was the ultimate power trip. "You found a Himalayan?" he asked. "Those are 200 grand. "Yes," I said. "And I have the money in my personal savings. But I'm so stupid with these international transfers. The seller requires a secure digital signature for the transaction because it's such a high value. I tried to do it, but the bank keeps blocking me. I don't know how to bypass the firewall." I pushed the iPad toward him. On the screen was a website Walter's tech team had built. It looked exactly like a high-end luxury auction site. It showed the bag, the price, and a secure payment gateway button. "I just wanted to make you happy, Russell," I whispered, squeezing a fake tear from my eye. "But I can't even do this right." Russell sighed, shaking his head at my incompetence. "God, Meredith, you really are useless with tech. Move over. Let me handle it." He grabbed the iPad. "So I just need to authorize the transfer?" "Yes," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It asks for a hardware key verification. For security." Russell didn't hesitate. He felt like the master of the universe. His wife was buying his mistress a bag. He was untouchable. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keychain. The small, silver USB token glinted in the light. The key to the Swiss accounts. The key to the evidence. He plugged it into the side of the iPad. "Watch and learn," he said arrogantly. He typed in his PIN. He pressed authorize. On the screen, a loading bar appeared. Processing payment, it said. But in the background, the malware I had installed was waking up. It wasn't processing a payment. It was cloning the digital signature. It was copying the encryption keys from his token and sending them directly to Walter's secure server. 10%. 30%. Internet's slow, Russell complained. It's a big file. I mean, a big payment, I stammered. Please be patient. 60%. 90%. Come on, Russell muttered. 100%. Transaction complete, the screen flashed. There, Russell said, pulling the USB key out and tossing the iPad back to me. Done. You see? Simple. Tiffany is going to freak out. He smiled at me, a smile of pure condescension. You did good, Meredith. Maybe you're not totally useless after all. I looked down at the iPad. A small notification from Walter popped up in the corner, invisible to Russell. Keys_receive.decryption_start. I looked up at my husband. I forced one last, weak smile. I'm glad you're happy, Russell, I said. Because I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I gave you exactly what you wanted. He went to bed that night thinking he was a god. He had no idea that he had just handed me the weapon that would kill him. The evidence was unlocked. The assets were traced. And the kill switch was ready. Now, all I had to do was wait for the gala. The stage was set for his destruction. And I was going to enjoy every second of it. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of calculated silence. I moved through the penthouse like a ghost, packing boxes that Russell didn't see, moving assets that Russell didn't track, and preparing my heart for the demolition of the life I had known for 12 years. Walter and I met one last time in his office, a high-rise fortress of solitude that smelled of mahogany and old money. The view of Chicago was breathtaking, the city looking like a circuit board of gold and amber lights. It was fitting. I was about to unplug the main server of Russell's existence. Everything is in place, Meredith, Walter said, sliding a thick stack of documents across his desk. The forensic accounting report is complete. We have the digital footprint of every dollar he stole from the pension fund. We have the logs of the crypto losses. And thanks to that USB key you secured, we have the Swiss bank statements proving he was laundering the remaining assets. I picked up the documents. They were heavy. They felt like a weapon. And the shares? I asked, my voice steady. Acquired, Walter nodded. My shell company has quietly bought up the floating stock. Combined with the voting rights from the disgruntled minority shareholders I've contacted, and the block you are about to inherit, you will control 30% of Miller Construction Group. You will be the single largest individual shareholder. He handed me a pen. Sign here. This transfers the ownership of the shell company to you. The moment you sign this, you aren't just his wife anymore. You are his boss. My hand hovered over the paper. I thought about the man I had married. The boy with the empty pockets and the big dreams. I thought about the way he used to look at me before the money, before the greed, before Tiffany. Was I really going to destroy him? Was I really going to burn it all down? Then I remembered Toby's empty college fund. I remembered the lipstick on the collar. I remembered the way he looked at me when he told me I was useless. I signed the paper. The ink was black and permanent. Good, Walter said. Now, the timing. We can release this now. We can have him arrested tonight. No, I said, standing up and walking to the window. Not tonight. He wants a show? I'll give him a show. He's throwing this gala to announce his vision for the future. He wants to be the king of Chicago. I want him to fall from the highest possible height. The gala then, Walter agreed. We've set up a bot. It's connected to the SEC's tip line, the major news outlets, and the email inboxes of every board member. It's a digital kill switch. One text from you, and it all goes live. I drove home that night with a strange sense of calm. It was the calm of a soldier before the battle. When I walked into the penthouse, Russell was trying on his tuxedo in front of the hallway mirror. He was preening, adjusting his bow tie, admiring his own reflection. "You're late," he said without turning around. "Make sure my shoes are polished. And don't wear anything embarrassing tomorrow. I don't want you looking frumpy next to Tiffany. She's wearing a custom piece." "I'll wear something appropriate," I said softly. "Good. And Meredith?" He turned to look at me, his eyes cold and empty. "Stay in the background. Tomorrow is my night. Don't ruin it." "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Russell," I replied. I went to my room and pulled out the emerald green gown I had bought months ago. It was elegant, regal, and powerful. It wasn't the dress of a trophy wife. It was the armor of a queen. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the broken housewife who cried over cold dinners. She was sharp. She was dangerous. She was ready. I touched the phone in my pocket. The kill switch was just a tap away. "Enjoy your last night of sleep, Russell," I whispered to the empty room. "Because tomorrow, the nightmare begins." Let's go back to that moment in the lobby. The moment I hung up the phone with Walter and said, "Pull the trigger." Inside the ballroom, the applause for the bodyguard slap stunt had likely died down, replaced by confused murmurs as I walked out. Russell was probably trying to spin it, laughing it off as a joke, telling everyone I was emotional or hysterical. He probably ordered the band to play jazz, grabbed a glass of champagne, and pulled Tiffany close, thinking he had one. He had exactly 30 minutes. I stood outside the hotel, the cold wind biting my cheeks, but I felt on fire. My driver, a loyal man named Henry who had been with us for years and hated Russell, pulled the car up to the curb. "Everything okay, Mrs. Miller?" Henry asked, seeing my pale face. "Everything is perfect, Henry," I said. "Just wait. We aren't leaving yet." Inside the ballroom, the invisible timer hit 0. It started with a single phone chiming. Then another. Then a chorus of beeps, rings, and vibrations filled the room like a swarm of digital locusts. The guests, the elite of Chicago, bankers, investors, politicians, all reached into their pockets. The headline was everywhere. It was on the Bloomberg terminal. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal online. It was trending on Twitter. Breaking: Miller Construction CEO Russell Miller accused of massive fraud. Pension fund looted. FBI investigating. Attached to the articles were the documents. The undeniable, irrefutable proof. The transfer logs with his digital signature. The shell companies registered to his personal address. The emails mocking the investors. Inside the ballroom, the music stopped. I wasn't there to see it, but Henry told me later. He said the room erupted into chaos. The board members, who were raising toasts to Russell just moments ago, were now screaming into their phones, ordering their brokers to dump the stock. The stock price of Miller Construction Group didn't just dip, it plummeted. It went into freefall. In 10 minutes, Russell lost 60% of his net worth. The margin calls triggered automatically. His personal accounts, linked to the stock as collateral, were frozen instantly. Russell, standing on stage with Tiffany, looked confused. He saw people pointing at him, not with admiration, but with fury. He saw his vice president of finance running toward him, waving a tablet, his face pale as a sheet. Russell grabbed the tablet. I can only imagine the color draining from his face as he read the headline. As he realized that the secure transaction he made with the USB key, the handbag purchase, was the final nail in his coffin. He looked around the room, searching for me. He knew. In that instant, his arrogance shattered, and he knew exactly who had done this. He shoved Tiffany aside. He jumped off the stage and sprinted toward the exit, his tuxedo tails flapping like the wings of a dying crow. I was leaning against the car, checking my watch. 29 minutes. The double doors burst open. Russell stumbled out, gasping for air, sweat pouring down his face. He looked wild, desperate. When he saw me standing there, calm and collected, he stopped. "Meredith," he screamed, his voice cracking. "Meredith, what did you do?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him. He ran to me, grabbing my shoulders. His grip was weak, trembling. "Stop it! You have to stop it. The stock is crashing. The SEC is calling. They're freezing everything. Fix it. You're the CFO, you know how to fix it." "I'm not the CFO, Russell," I said coldly, removing his hands from my dress as if they were covered in filth. "I'm just the boring housewife, remember?" He fell to his knees. Right there on the dirty sidewalk. The great Russell Miller, kneeling before the wife he had tried to have slapped. "Grace." "Meredith, please," he sobbed, confusing my name in his panic. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll give up Tiffany. I'll do anything. Just call Walter. Tell him it's a mistake. You're ruining me. You're ruining our family." "I didn't ruin the family, Russell," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You did. You ruined it when you stole our son's college fund. You ruined it when you stole the workers' pensions. You ruined it when you ordered a man to hit me." I opened the car door. The interior was warm and inviting. "Meredith. Please," he wailed, clutching at the hem of my dress. "I have nothing. I'll go to jail." "I know," I said. "And you deserve every day of it." I stepped into the car and slammed the door shut. The sound was heavy, final. Like the closing of a vault. Through the tinted window, I saw him screaming, pounding on the glass, a man drowning in a sea of his own making. "Drive, Henry," I said. As the car pulled away, leaving my husband in the dust of his shattered empire, I took a deep breath. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel regret. I felt light. If you are listening to this, and you have ever felt trapped, ever felt small, ever felt like someone was stealing your light, I want you to know that you are stronger than you think. You have a breaking point, yes, but you also have a turning point. If you are still with me on this journey, please, do me a favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know that you are standing with me. Let me know that you believe in justice. Seeing your 1 tells me that I'm not alone, that we are in this together. Your support fuels me more than you know. So please, comment 1 right now, and let's continue. Because Russell's fall was just the beginning. The war was far from over. The days following the gala were a frenzy of legal motions and media storms. While Russell was being dragged through the mud in every newspaper in the country, dubbed the Bernie Madoff of construction, there was another reckoning happening. One that gave me a specific, bitter sense of satisfaction. Tiffany. The muse. The girl who had laughed while my husband ordered me to be assaulted. She thought she could just walk away. She thought that because her name wasn't on the company documents, she was safe. She was wrong. Under the RICO statutes and the proceeds of crime laws, any asset purchased with stolen funds is subject to seizure. And thanks to my meticulous forensic accounting, I could trace every single dollar Russell had spent on her. The penthouse he bought for her in the Gold Coast? Purchased with the stolen pension fund. The Porsche Cayenne she drove? Paid for by a shell company. The jewelry? The clothes? The handbag I had helped Russell buy? All of it was fruit of the poisonous tree. 3 days after the gala, I accompanied the asset recovery team and the U.S. Marshals to Tiffany's apartment. I didn't have to be there, legally speaking. But emotionally? I needed to see it. We arrived at 9 a.m. The doorman, who had sneered at me in the past when I came looking for Russell, now looked at the federal agents with wide, terrified eyes and let us up immediately. When the marshals pounded on the door, Tiffany opened it wearing a silk robe, one that cost more than my monthly grocery budget used to be. She looked disheveled, her mascara smeared. When she saw me standing behind the agents, her face twisted into a snarl. "What are you doing here?" she shrieked. "Get away from me. Russell will sue you for harassment." "Russell can't afford a lawyer, Tiffany," I said calmly. "And neither can you." The lead marshal stepped forward and handed her a warrant. "Ms. Thorne, this residence and all contents within are being seized by the federal government as evidence in the case of United States v. Miller. You have 30 minutes to vacate the premises." "You can't do this," she screamed, backing away. "This is my apartment. He gave it to me. It's a gift." "It was bought with stolen money," the marshal said impassively. "That makes it stolen property. And you are potentially looking at charges for receiving stolen goods if you don't cooperate." The color drained from her face. She looked at me, pleading now. "Meredith, look, I didn't know. I swear. I'm just a victim here too. He lied to me." I walked into the living room. It was littered with shopping bags and fashion magazines. It smelled of that cloying vanilla perfume. "A victim?" I asked, picking up a diamond bracelet from the coffee table. "You knew he was married. You knew he had a son. You stood there laughing while he tried to have me beaten. You aren't a victim, Tiffany. You're an accomplice." "I have nowhere to go," she cried, tears streaming down her face, ugly, panicked tears. "I sold my condo to move in here. I have no money." "Well," I said, looking around the luxurious room, "I suggest you find a job. I hear McDonald's is hiring. Or maybe you can sell that personality of yours, though I doubt it's worth much." The agents began tagging everything. The furniture, the electronics, the artwork. Tiffany ran to the bedroom and started frantically stuffing designer clothes into a suitcase. "Leave the clothes, Ms. Thorne," the marshal ordered. "The warrant covers clothing purchased after January 1st of this year." "That Louis Vuitton trunk?" "Stolen funds." "Leave it." She froze. She looked down at the pile of silk and leather in her hands. Slowly, painfully, she dropped them. She walked out of that apartment with nothing but the sweatpants and t-shirt she was wearing, and a single plastic grocery bag containing her toiletries and a few old items she had owned before Russell. I followed her down to the lobby. When we stepped outside, the paparazzi were waiting. I hadn't called them, but in a city like Chicago, scandal draws cameras like blood draws sharks. They swarmed her. Flashbulbs popped. Questions were shouted. "Tiffany! Did you know about the fraud? Tiffany! How does it feel to be homeless? Tiffany! Do you have anything to say to the employees who lost their pensions?" She put her hands over her face, sobbing, and ran down the street, trying to flag down a taxi. But no taxi stopped for the hysterical, crying woman running from the cameras. I watched her go. A part of me, the old Meredith, felt a twinge of pity. No one deserves to be destroyed like that. But then I remembered the smirk. I remembered the text messages mocking me. I turned to the marshal. "Thank you, officer." "Just doing the job, ma'am," he nodded. I got into my car. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Beverly. "You witch. You evil witch. You will pay for this." I smiled and blocked the number. Tiffany was handled. Russell was in jail, for now. But the war wasn't over. Beverly was still out there. And she had the one thing that could still hurt me. My son. Russell was released on bail 2 weeks later. His mother, Beverly, had liquidated her own retirement savings and sold her condo to post the bond. A man like Russell, stripped of his fortune, is dangerous. But a narcissist stripped of his ego and backed by an enabling mother? That is a lethal combination. They couldn't attack me financially anymore. I held the cards. I controlled the shares. I had the best lawyers. So, they went for the only soft target left. Toby. Under the temporary custody arrangement, which my lawyer warned me we couldn't fully block until the criminal trial concluded, Russell still had visitation rights every other weekend. I was terrified to let Toby go, but the court order was clear. Failure to comply will damage your case for full custody, my lawyer, a shark named Sarah, told me. Let him hang himself, Meredith. Be the reasonable parent. So, I packed Toby's bag. I kissed his forehead. Be good, baby. Call me if you need anything. Toby looked at me with confused eyes. Why are you doing this to Daddy, Mom? Grandma says you put him in a cage. My blood ran cold. Daddy made some mistakes, Toby. Grown-up mistakes. We're just trying to fix them. Grandma says you stole his money, Toby muttered as he walked out the door to Russell's waiting, rented, car. That weekend was the longest of my life. When Toby came back on Sunday evening, he was different. He was holding a brand new, limited edition gaming console, the kind that cost $1,000 on the resale market. Where did you get that? I asked, staring at the box. Russell was supposedly broke. Daddy bought it for me, Toby said defiantly, clutching the box to his chest. He said you wouldn't buy it because you're cheap. He said you want to keep all the money for yourself. I knelt down to his level. Toby, Daddy doesn't have money right now. He shouldn't be buying expensive toys. He borrowed it. Toby shouted. He borrowed it because he loves me. Unlike you. You just work all the time and talk to lawyers. Daddy took me to the amusement park. We ate pizza and ice cream and he told me that we're going to move to a big house soon as the mean judge realizes you're lying. I felt like I had been slapped. They were buying his affection. They were using money they didn't have, probably predatory loans, to create a Disneyland dad fantasy world, while painting me as the villainous, stingy mother. It got worse. Over the next month, Toby became distant. He stopped drawing pictures for me. He refused to eat my cooking, claiming it was gross compared to the takeout Russell bought him. He started parroting phrases that an 8-year-old shouldn't know. Mom, what's spousal support? He asked one night over dinner. Grandma says you're a gold digger. Toby! I slammed my hand on the table. That is enough. You are not to use those words. I want to live with Daddy, he screamed, throwing his fork across the room. I hate it here. You're boring. You're mean. Grandma loves me. Daddy loves me. You just love your stupid company. He ran to his room and slammed the door. I heard him crying. I sank onto the kitchen floor, burying my face in my hands. This was their strategy. Parental alienation. It is a slow, insidious poison. They knew they couldn't win in court with facts, so they were trying to win by destroying the bond between mother and child. They wanted Toby to testify, to tell the judge he wanted to live with his father. If Toby chose Russell, the court might grant him custody. And if Russell got custody, he would have access to the child support payments that would come from my assets. He was using our son as a paycheck. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't fight fire with fire. I couldn't badmouth Russell to Toby because that would only confuse and hurt him more. I had to prove to the court and to Toby that his father wasn't the hero he thought he was. But how do you explain to a child that his fun weekends are a lie? How do you explain that the gaming console was bought with blood money? I needed proof. Not financial proof, I had plenty of that. I needed proof of the emotional abuse. Proof of the manipulation happening behind closed doors when I wasn't there. I needed eyes and ears inside Beverly's house. I looked at Toby's backpack lying by the door. It was a Spider-Man backpack. He took it everywhere. An idea formed. It was ethically gray. It was risky. If Russell found it, he could claim I was stalking him. But I was desperate. I was a mother fighting for her cub. I went to my home office and opened the safe. I took out a small, high-powered digital voice recorder. It was the size of a USB stick. I sewed it into the lining of the backpack right behind the Spider-Man logo. It was voice-activated. It would record everything happening around Toby for up to 48 hours. "Forgive me, Toby," I whispered as I stitched the fabric back together. "But one day, you'll understand." The next Friday, I sent him off with a smile. "Have fun, sweetie." "Bye," he grunted, not looking back. I waited 48 hours in agony. When he returned on Sunday, he looked exhausted, pale, and unusually quiet. He didn't brag about the toys. He just went straight to his room. I waited until he was in the shower. I ripped the lining open and retrieved the recorder. I plugged it into my computer, put on my headphones, and pressed play. What I heard made me want to burn the world down. The audio quality was surprisingly clear. It started with the sound of the car engine, Russell asking Toby if he was hungry. Normal. Then, they arrived at Beverly's rented townhouse. I fast-forwarded through the sounds of cartoons and video games. Then, I found it. Saturday evening. Dinner time. Click. "Beverly, eat your vegetables, Toby. Unlike your mother, I actually care about your nutrition. She probably feeds you frozen garbage, doesn't she? Toby, Mom cooks roast chicken." Beverly, "Oh, stop defending her. She's a witch, Toby. Do you know what a witch is? It's a woman who tricks men and steals their souls. Your mother tricked your father. She stole his company. That building? The Miller Tower? Your daddy built that. And she took it. Russell, Mom, don't. Beverly, don't mom me, Russell. He needs to know. The boy needs to know that his inheritance is gone because that woman is greedy. Listen to me, Toby. When you go to court, the lady in the black robe will ask you who you want to live with. What are you going to say?" Toby, quietly, I don't know." Russell, voice rising, "What do you mean you don't know? After I bought you that Xbox? After I took you to Six Flags? You ungrateful little. Look at me when I'm talking to you." There was a sound of a hand slamming on a table. I flinched. "Russell, I am your father. I am the only one who cares about you. Your mother is trying to put me in jail. Do you want your daddy in jail?" Toby, crying, "No." Russell, "Then you tell the judge you hate her. You tell the judge she hits you." My heart stopped. The air left my lungs. Toby, but she doesn't hit me." Beverly, "It doesn't matter if she does or doesn't. It's a white lie, Toby. To save your father. Do you love your father? Or do you want him to die in prison? Because that's what will happen. If you don't say she hits you, Daddy will die in jail." Toby, sobbing uncontrollably, "I don't want Daddy to die. I promise. I'll say it." Russell, "Good boy. Now stop crying. Men don't cry. Here, take $10. Go buy yourself some candy tomorrow. I ripped the headphones off my head. I was shaking. Violent, uncontrollable tremors racked my body. They weren't just alienating him. They were coaching him to commit perjury. They were coaching him to frame me for child abuse. And worst of all, they were terrorizing an 8-year-old boy with the threat of his father's death. It was psychological torture. I paced the room, breathing hard. My first instinct was to call the police immediately. But I stopped. I needed to be smart. This recording was powerful, but in some states, recording someone without consent is inadmissible or even illegal. I needed to know if I could use this. I called Sarah, my lawyer. It was 11 p.m. on a Sunday. Sarah, I said, my voice trembling. I have a recording. From Toby's backpack. I played her the clip. There was a long silence on the other end. Meredith, Sarah said, her voice deadly serious. This is explosive. Illinois is a two-party consent state for private conversations, generally. But there is an exception for the protection of a child where there is evidence of abuse or coaching to commit a crime. This is coercion. This is witness tampering. Can we use it? I asked. We present it to the guardian ad litem, Sarah said. The court-appointed representative for Toby. We don't play it in open court yet. We let the guardian hear how they are psychologically abusing the child. The guardian will recommend suspending visitation immediately. Do it, I said. I want him away from them. Now. But the recording revealed something else. Later in the tape, after Toby had gone to bed, Russell and Beverly were talking. Their voices were lower, hushed. Russell, the lawyers say the fraud case is tight. But the Skyline Project, if they find out about the concrete, Mom, that's manslaughter. That's life without parole. Beverly, they won't find out. Peterson is gone. He's a ghost. As long as nobody finds Frank Peterson, the bodies stay buried. Literally. Russell, I'm scared. If Meredith digs too deep. Beverly, she won't. She's focused on the money. She doesn't know about the accident. Just keep your mouth shut. I froze. The Skyline Project. Frank Peterson. Manslaughter. This wasn't just about financial fraud anymore. This wasn't just about custody. Accident. Bodies. Russell hadn't just stolen money. He had killed people. I sat down at my desk, my hands cold as ice. I opened my laptop and typed Miller Construction Skyline Project accident into the search bar. Nothing. No news reports. No obituaries. Just glowing reviews of a luxury high-rise in Long Island City. Okay, Russell, I whispered, a new, terrifying resolve filling my veins. You want to play dirty with our son? I'm going to dig up your graveyard. I picked up the phone and called Walter. Get the private investigators ready. We're looking for a man named Frank Peterson. And we need to find him before Russell does. The next morning, I dropped Toby off at school. I hugged him longer than usual. He was stiff, resistant, his little mind still poisoned by the lies he had been fed. I love you, Toby, I whispered. No matter what. He didn't answer. I drove straight to the Miller Construction headquarters, my headquarters now. The transition was still messy. Half the staff had resigned out of loyalty to Russell or fear of prosecution. The other half looked at me with a mix of awe and terror. I walked into the archives room. It was a dusty, windowless basement filled with bankers' boxes. I need the physical files for the Skyline Project. Long Island City. 2019, I told the archivist. Those files were misplaced, Ms. Miller, the young man stammered. Mr. Miller removed them personally 2 years ago. Of course he did. Check the backup server, I ordered. The engineering logs. The procurement invoices. Cross-reference them with the supplier delivery manifests. It took 3 days. 3 days of digging through digital trash. And then, the pattern emerged. The architectural blueprints called for grade structural steel and Type 5 high-density concrete. This was a 40-story residential tower. It housed hundreds of families. But the invoices from the suppliers showed something different. They showed shipments of grade C steel, cheap, brittle, prone to fatigue. And the concrete? The receipts were from a discount supplier known for cutting corners with sand mixtures. I did the math. The material savings were about $4 million. $4 million that went straight into Russell's pocket. But where was the accident? I found it in a buried email chain between Russell and the site manager, Frank Peterson. Subject: Urgent scaffolding collapse. Date: October 12, 2019. From F. Peterson. To R. Miller. Russell, the section on the 14th floor gave way. The anchors pulled right out of the concrete. It's too soft. It hasn't cured right because the mix is trash. 2 guys fell. Martinez and Kowalski. They're dead. This is on us. We need to shut down. Reply from R. Miller. Shut up, Frank. Handle it. Pay the families. NDA everything. If this gets out, the project dies and we're both bankrupt. Make it look like worker error. And get rid of the report. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. Martinez and Kowalski. 2 men. 2 fathers, probably. Dead because Russell wanted to save money on concrete. And hundreds of people were currently living in that building, sleeping in beds anchored to crumbling walls. I felt sick. This was heavy. This was a moral weight I hadn't expected to carry. I called Walter. We have a problem, I said. A catastrophic one. The Skyline building is a death trap. If we release this, Walter said, his voice grave, the company's stock will go to zero. The liability lawsuits will be in the billions. You will lose everything you just fought for. Your inheritance, your shares, they will be worthless paper. I know, I said, looking at the photo of Toby on my desk. But people are living there, Walter. Children are living there. If that building falls, I can't live with that blood on my hands. I don't care about the money anymore. You're a good woman, Meredith, Walter said softly. But an email isn't enough to convict him of manslaughter. It's digital. He'll claim it's faked. We need the witness. We need Frank Peterson. The private investigators located Frank Peterson in 48 hours. He wasn't dead. He was hiding. He was living off the grid in a trailer park in rural West Virginia, under the name Lester Vance. He's terrified, the PI told me. He's armed. He won't talk to strangers. And Russell's cronies are looking for him too. We picked up chatter. They know the custody case is heating up and they're cleaning up loose ends. I'm going, I said. It's dangerous, Meredith. He won't talk to a lawyer. He won't talk to a cop. But he might talk to a mother, I said. I'm going to West Virginia. I packed a bag. I told the nanny and the bodyguards to lock down the penthouse and not let anyone near Toby. I drove south. The city skyline faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the rolling, dark hills of Appalachia. I was driving into the heart of darkness to find a ghost. I knew that finding Frank Peterson was the only way to put Russell away for good. Not just for fraud, but for life. It was the only way to save Toby from a monster. But as I drove down those winding, fog-covered roads, I had a sinking feeling. Russell knew I was coming. I checked my rearview mirror. A black SUV had been behind me for the last 20 miles. The hunt was on. West Virginia is beautiful in a haunting way. Mist clings to the mountains like a shroud, and the roads twist like snakes through the deep hollows. But I wasn't there for the scenery. I was there for the trailer at the end of a dirt road in a town called Blackwood. I had lost the black SUV about 50 miles back, pulling a dangerous U-turn on a narrow highway. My heart was still hammering, but I pressed on. I pulled my rental car up to the trailer. It was run down, with peeling paint and aluminum foil over the windows. A rusted pickup truck sat on blocks in the yard. I stepped out, raising my hands to show I was unarmed. "Mr. Peterson?" I called out. "Frank Peterson?" The door creaked open. A shotgun barrel emerged first. Then a woman. She looked worn, tired, her face etched with lines of worry that were too deep for her age. "Who are you?" she snapped. "We don't know no Frank." "My name is Meredith Miller," I said, my voice steady despite the gun pointed at my chest. "I'm Russell Miller's wife." "Ex-wife." The woman's eyes widened. She lowered the gun slightly. "You got some nerve coming here. Your husband ruined our lives." "He ruined mine too," I said. "And he's trying to ruin my son's." "Please. I just want to talk. I know about the concrete. I know about Martinez and Kowalski." At the mention of the dead workers, the woman flinched. She looked back into the dark trailer. "Frank. Come out here." A man emerged. He looked like a shadow of a man. Gaunt, bearded, his eyes darting around nervously. This was Frank Peterson. The man who knew where the bodies were buried. "I told you," Frank rasped. "I ain't talking. They said they'd kill Mary. They said they'd burn the trailer down." "Frank," I said, stepping closer. "Russell is desperate. He's facing prison for fraud, but he's trying to frame me to get custody of our son. He's trying to take my boy. I need you to help me stop him. And there are families living in that building right now. If it falls." Frank looked down at his boots. I tried to stop him. I told him the anchors wouldn't hold. "I know," I said softly. "I saw the email. But an email isn't enough. I need you to stand in court. I need you to look the jury in the eye and tell them what he did." "I can't," he whispered. "I'm a coward. I took the hush money. I'm just as guilty." "You're not a coward, Frank," his wife, Mary, spoke up. She put a hand on his shoulder. "You've been dying inside for 5 years. Every night you wake up screaming. You can't live like this. We can't live like this." She looked at me. "If he talks, can you keep us safe?" "I have a team," I promised. "Former FBI. We will move you tonight. A safe house. New identities after the trial. I have the resources. Russell has nothing left but threats." Frank looked at his wife. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes. He looked at me and saw the desperation of a mother. "Okay," he said, his voice cracking. "I'll do it. For the 2 men who died. And for your boy." We didn't have much time. I called Walter's security team. They were 2 hours away. "Pack your things," I told them. "Essentials only. We need to leave now." They were scrambling to pack when I heard the sound of gravel crunching. I looked out the window. The black SUV was back. And it wasn't alone. 2 more trucks were pulling up the driveway, blocking the exit. Men in dark clothes were stepping out. They weren't police. They were fixers. Russell's last line of defense. "Frank, get down!" I screamed. A brick shattered the front window. Attached to it was a note. I crawled across the floor and unrolled the paper. "Silence is golden. Talk and you burn." "They're going to torch the trailer," Frank yelled, grabbing his shotgun. "No," I said, my mind racing. I was a CFO, not a soldier. But I knew strategy. Back door. Into the woods. "My car is blocked, but we can make it to the ridge." We ran. We ran through the dense West Virginia woods, slipping on wet leaves, branches tearing at my expensive clothes. Behind us, I heard the whoosh of gasoline igniting. I looked back and saw flames licking up the side of the trailer. They had burned it down. If we had stayed inside, we would be dead. We hid in a ravine until Walter's security team arrived, a helicopter chopping through the mist like an angel of vengeance. As we lifted off, leaving the burning wreckage of Frank's past behind, I held Mary's hand. "It's over," I told her. "We have him." Frank looked at me, his face covered in soot. "Mrs. Miller, you're a hell of a woman." "I'm just a mother, Frank," I said. "And God help anyone who gets between a mother and her child." Returning to Chicago with Frank Peterson was like bringing a nuclear bomb into a knife fight. We stashed him and Mary in a safe house, a fortified penthouse owned by one of Walter's shell corporations. Armed guards stood outside the door 24/7. But Russell's camp knew we had him. The burning of the trailer was a clear signal, the gloves were off. The threats escalated. I woke up 2 days before the trial to find a box on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a dead rat with a toy car, a replica of the one Toby played with, tied to its neck. I nearly vomited. The message was clear: we can get to your son. I sent Toby to stay with Walter in a secure location. Toby cried when he left, screaming that I was sending him away because I didn't love him. "I'm doing this to save you, baby," I whispered through the glass of the car window, my heart breaking. "One day you'll know." The fear was paralyzed. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Every car that drove past my house slowly made me reach for the panic button. I thought about giving up. I thought about taking the plea deal Russell's lawyers had offered, drop the manslaughter investigation, and Russell gives up full custody. It was tempting. So tempting. I could have my son back. I could have peace. But then I thought about the Skyline building. I thought about the families sleeping there tonight. If I took the deal, Russell would walk free on the manslaughter charges. He would never fix the building. It would eventually collapse. And those deaths would be on my conscience. I couldn't trade thousands of lives for my own peace of mind. On the morning of the trial, I put on a white suit. White for truth. White for clarity. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. Dark circles under my eyes. But my eyes were fierce. "You can do this," I told myself. "You survived the gala. You survived the woods. You can survive a courtroom." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Last chance. Don't let Frank testify. Or the boy disappears." I stared at the screen. My hands shook. I called the head of my security detail. "Is Toby secure?" "He's in the safe room, ma'am. Playing video games. Walter is with him. Nobody gets in or out without a retina scan." "Good. Double the guard." I walked into the courthouse. The press was a zoo. Cameras shoved in my face. "Meredith! Is it true you kidnapped the witness? Meredith! Did you frame your husband?" I ignored them. I walked into the courtroom. Russell was there. He looked thinner, paler, but his eyes were burning with hate. Beverly sat behind him, clutching a rosary beads, looking like a grieving saint. When our eyes met, Russell drew a finger across his throat. A subtle gesture. I didn't blink. I sat down at the plaintiff's table next to the district attorney. Are we ready? The DA asked. Frank is in the holding cell, I said. He's ready. The judge banged the gavel. All rise. The trial of the century began. Russell's lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Sterling, started his opening statement painting Russell as a visionary who was brought down by a vindictive, scorned ex-wife. This woman, Sterling pointed at me, is obsessed with revenge. She destroyed his company. She alienated his son. And now, she has bribed a disgruntled former employee to fabricate a story about concrete. It is a lie, ladies and gentlemen. A lie born of jealousy. I sat stone-faced. Let them talk, I thought. Let them spin their webs. Because I knew what was coming. I knew that the truth, when it walks into a room, has a sound. And that sound was about to deafen them all. The first 3 days of the trial were a grueling slugfest. Mr. Sterling was brilliant, I'll give him that. He managed to get the email evidence excluded on a technicality, claiming the chain of custody was broken because I had accessed the servers without authorization. Russell smirked. Beverly looked smug. Without the email, it was just my word against his. Then came the moment. The prosecution calls Frank Peterson to the stand, the district attorney announced. The doors opened. The courtroom went silent. Russell's head snapped around. He hadn't believed we actually had him. He thought his goons had scared him off or, worse. Frank walked in. He looked different than he did in the trailer. He was clean-shaven, wearing a suit I had bought him. He walked with a limp, a reminder of the escape through the woods, but his head was held high. He took the stand. He swore on the Bible. Mr. Peterson, the DA began. What was your role in the Skyline project? I was the site foreman, Frank said, his voice gravelly but clear. And what can you tell us about the materials used? Frank took a deep breath. He looked at Russell. Russell was staring at him, eyes wide, mouthing the word don't. We used cheap concrete, Frank said. Grade C. The boss. Mr. Miller, he ordered the swap. He pocketed the difference. Objection. Sterling shouted. Hearsay. I have the ledger, Frank said, pulling a small, battered notebook from his pocket. I kept my own records. Every truck. Every pour. Every bribe. The courtroom gasped. Sterling froze. And the accident? The DA asked. Frank started to cry. Silent tears running down his weathered cheeks. The anchors pulled out. Martinez and Kowalski fell 14 stories. I heard them hit the ground. It sounded like wet sandbags. Beverly let out a gasp in the gallery. Mr. Miller told me to cover it up, Frank continued, his voice rising. He said if I talked, he'd kill me. He paid the families off. He threatened my wife. Liar! Russell screamed, jumping to his feet. He's a drunk. He's lying. Sit down, Mr. Miller, the judge roared. Frank looked straight at Russell. I ain't lying, Russell. And I ain't drunk. Not anymore. I'm done carrying your ghosts. Then, the DA played the final card. Mr. Peterson, did you recognize the voice on the recording taken from Toby Miller's backpack? My lawyer had fought hard to get the recording admitted, not for the custody case, but as evidence of character and witness intimidation regarding the fraud cover-up conversation at the end of the tape. The judge had allowed it. The audio played. Russell's voice filled the room. If they find out about the concrete, Mom, that's manslaughter. As long as nobody finds Frank Peterson, the bodies stay buried. The silence that followed was absolute. Russell stood frozen. His face went gray. He looked at the jury. 12 pairs of eyes looked back at him with pure revulsion. He looked at Beverly. She was sobbing into her hands. He looked at me. And in that moment, the monster died. The arrogance, the narcissism, the bravado, it all evaporated. He was just a small, scared man in a suit that suddenly looked too big for him. Russell stammered. I just wanted to be successful. I just wanted. Mr. Miller, sit down or I will hold you in contempt, the judge barked. But Russell didn't sit. He collapsed. He slumped back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. He knew. It was over. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Wire fraud. Embezzlement. Money laundering. And 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. When the verdict was read, Russell didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just wept. Quiet, pathetic sobs. The marshals moved in to handcuff him. As they led him away, he stopped near my table. He looked at me. Meredith, he whispered. Take care of Toby. I will, I said, my voice steady. I'll raise him to be a good man. A man who tells the truth. He nodded, a broken acknowledgement, and was led out the side door. I walked out of the courthouse into the blinding sunlight. The reporters were shouting, but I didn't hear them. I looked up at the sky. It was blue. A piercing, beautiful blue. I pulled out my phone and called Walter. It's done, I said. It's done, he confirmed. And Meredith? The Skyline residents have been notified. The retrofitting crew starts tomorrow. You saved them. I hung up. I got into my car and told Henry, take me to my son. 6 months later. The visiting room of the federal penitentiary was cold and smelled of bleach. I sat on one side of the thick glass partition. Toby sat on my lap. He was taller now, 9 years old. We waited. The door on the other side buzzed open. Russell walked in. He was wearing a beige jumpsuit. His hair, once perfectly styled, was shaved close to his skull. He looked 10 years older. The swagger was gone. His posture was slumped. He sat down and picked up the phone. I picked up ours. Hi, Dad, Toby said, his voice small. Hey, buddy, Russell said. He smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached his eyes. It was a sad smile, but it was real. You look big. Are you playing baseball? Yeah, Toby said. Mom coaches the team now. She's actually pretty good. Russell looked at me. She always was good at everything she tried, he said softly. We talked for 20 minutes. Mostly about school, about Toby's friends. Russell didn't ask about the company. He didn't ask about the money. He didn't ask about Beverly, who had moved to Florida and stopped contacting us out of shame. When the guard signaled that time was up, Russell put his hand against the glass. Toby, he said. Listen to your mother. Always. She's the strongest person I know. Don't be like me, son. Be better. I will, Dad, Toby said, tears welling in his eyes. Russell looked at me. Meredith, thank you. For bringing him. He needs his father, I said. Even if his father is in here. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. For the slap. For Tiffany. For the lies. I know, I said. And I felt nothing. No hate. No anger. Just a quiet pity for a man who had the world and threw it away for a mirage. Goodbye, Russell. We walked out of the prison. The heavy steel gates clanged shut behind us. Toby held my hand as we walked to the car. Mom? Yeah, sweetie? Is Dad a bad man? I stopped and looked at him. Your dad did bad things, Toby. Terrible things. But people are complicated. He loves you. And he's paying for his mistakes. That's what matters. We take responsibility. Toby nodded. I love you, Mom. I love you too, T-Bear. I started the car. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the prison. I looked forward. The road ahead was open. 1 year later. I stood on the balcony of my new home, a modest house with a big backyard in the suburbs. The penthouse was sold. The luxury cars were gone. I drove a Volvo now. But I was richer than I had ever been. Not in money, though the Miller shares had rebounded under my leadership and the new ethical board. I was rich in peace. I had renamed the company Phoenix Construction. We focused on affordable, safe housing. We had a strict transparency policy. Every brick, every beam was accounted for. I used the dividends to start the Grace Project, named after my grandmother. It was a foundation that provided legal and financial aid to women escaping financial abuse and toxic marriages. We helped them find forensic accountants. We helped them find their voices. Walter came over for Sunday dinners. He and Toby played chess in the living room. Frank Peterson, now living openly under his real name, thanks to the witness protection program ending after the conviction, was our head of safety compliance. He was the most rigorous inspector in the state. No corner was ever cut on his watch. Tiffany? Last I heard, she was working as a hostess in a bar in Vegas, looking for her next mark. I didn't wish her ill. I just didn't think about her at all. Beverly died alone in a nursing home in Florida. I paid for the funeral, for Russell's sake, but I didn't go. I looked down at the garden. Toby was there, digging a hole with a shovel. We were planting an apple tree. Mom! Come help, he yelled. I put down my coffee cup and ran down the stairs. The grass felt cool under my bare feet. Okay, put the sapling in straight, I instructed. We packed the dirt around the roots. Toby wiped his muddy hands on his jeans, grinning. Do you think it will grow? He asked. It will, I said, smoothing his hair. It just needs good soil, sunlight, and a little bit of patience. Just like us. I looked at my son. He was happy. He was safe. He was kind. The war was over. The scars were there, yes. I would always carry the memory of that humiliation at the gala. I would always remember the fear in the West Virginia woods. But those scars weren't signs of weakness. They were proof of survival. I turned to the camera, to you, my friends, who have listened to this story. They tried to slap me down, I said. They tried to silence me. They tried to take my son. But they forgot one thing. A woman who builds her foundation on truth can never be destroyed. My name is Meredith. And I didn't just survive. I thrived. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to fight for your life, for your dignity, or for your children, know that you are a warrior. Don't let them make you feel small. Stand tall. Speak up. And never, ever let them see you break. Please share this story if you believe in justice. Like and subscribe for more. And remember, the best revenge isn't slapping back. It's living well. Goodbye for now. Looking back at Meredith's journey, we realize that her true victory wasn't the downfall of those who hurt her, but the reclamation of her own dignity. This story serves as a profound reminder that self-worth is not a gift from others, it is a fortress we build ourselves, often during our darkest moments. True resilience isn't just about enduring betrayal, but about having the courage to set boundaries and demand the respect we deserve. We often fear losing relationships or status, yet sometimes, the loss we dread is the very catalyst we need to discover our limitless potential. Meredith teaches us that standing up for the truth, even when your voice shakes, is the ultimate act of self-love. If this message resonated with you and sparked a sense of hope, please share your thoughts or simply comment good below. Let's celebrate the strength that lies within us all.